Well, during this moment of downtime, we can take a look elsewhere, but I think that this should really be sending alarm bells ringing for the CoPro. CoPro have got to do something, and soon, because, yeah, if Third International, especially if France gets overrun, it's going to make CoPro's job basically impossible. Even the Entente are probably looking at this with some alarm. But I think that the Russian invasion, they said that they were going to be ready in 1941. It is now January 42. They are a year late. And as we've mentioned before, Reichspact, the longer you leave them to build up, the stronger they do become. I think CoPro still has the better snowballing opportunity long term. But if Germany gets France's industry and Italy's industry added to theirs, that's going to be a difficult one to return from. Does AA give better heavy attack or something? Is that why they go for it? I don't know. Antharath, if you're still in chat, why do the heavy tank divisions use AA instead of SPGs? Because AA does have piercing, but it's not as good as heavy tank destroyers, which are also much cheaper. And then SPGs is the better breakthrough and the better soft attack, which is what you want against heavy infantry armies, which is generally what you're fighting if you're trying to get a breakthrough. I was actually, when I was playing as Poland, really disappointed by the soft attack, or just general damage output by AA. Alright, America, what are you doing? You are guarding Australasia and New Zealand. Okay, you have a couple of heavy tanks on the way to Australasia. You're in India with regular infantry units. You do have heavy tanks. Aha! North Africa. And that's a lot of Canadians. Oh no, it's not. It's just AIs. Might be expeditionary though. Let's go and click over to Canada and see if Canada has direct control of those units. They do. Canada's basically using anything so long as it's not their own manpower. Which is fine. I mean, it's a way of fighting. Okay, Germany. Germany has launched a massive attack on the borders of France, and they are pushing in. And I was right, that French border was not adequately guarded. There were only about 2 French divisions on any of those particular provinces. The Ukrainian attack over here has definitely diverted some of the help which the French front is going to need. We've got German powers also dropping just outside of Lyon, causing even more disruption. We've got the attack going into Italy. We've got the Austrians leading the charge, leading down into Italy proper. I think this is the fall of the Third International. I think that this might even happen quicker than I had predicted. Because I'd kind of forgotten that the Germans had overwhelming military presence here. And these infantry units, I very strongly suspect, are quite scary. Okay, less scary than I expected. Artillery, engineers, AA, and AT. 117 soft attack, combat width of 19. Okay. So yeah, they've just used the, I can tell you now, they're a mass assault doctrine for just packing even more infantry, which is how Germany has a standing army of 5 million at this point. And they have no shortage of divisions, unlike the French. So Germany's got 191 divisions in the field right now. France has got 132. Okay, France isn't actually as bad off as I thought for a moment there. But they have managed to punch across a lot of the forts here, and this territory down here in particular is basically just open ground. If those Austrian tanks start attacking here, it's over. And if the Ukrainians can keep the French tanks busy up here in the north, it's over. But we're seeing a very hefty German airborne attack going on. And these German airborne units, I didn't realise there were more than just the one. Oh, those aren't German. More Ukrainians. Ukraine is loving their powers right now. And we already know that those Ukrainian ones are quite strong. And in fact, no, these aren't Ukrainian. They're expeditionary. They're German. And they're the same template. Except that these have anti-tank instead of anti-air. So clearly at this point, Reichspact is going, okay, we have air superiority against the Third International. We've not seen any moves from the Russians yet. And in fact, Ukraine's getting more confident. So you remember in the past, Ukraine was guarding this river. Now they're actually guarding the border. They're like, you've given us enough time. We outnumber you 3 or 4 to 1 on this border. We can hold you on the entire frontage. And that's really bad for Russia, because the CoPro blitz that we were kind of hoping for, I don't think it's going to come, because I don't think Russia's got the troops for it. America's probably the country with the most individual impact of any faction. I don't think they're doing their job. I would agree with you there, Anthrath. Definitely. And this is definitely the fall of the Third International. That's a 5-unit cut-off. That's going to really hurt. Exactly where I said they would attack. Austrian heavy tanks punching through the lowlands in France. There are a couple of forests back here, but otherwise this is all wide open ground, and tanks love that kind of territory. And they're just going to surge through. We do have some French heavy tanks arriving, but we have seen that the Austrian heavies actually outperform the French heavies. They're worse on the defense, but they don't need to be good on the defense because they have these German death stacks to protect them. And they don't move that much faster than infantry, so the infantry will be there to support them. We do have... because of course we do. A French attack into Belgium, because the French don't seem to know how to attack anywhere except if it's Belgium. And we now have the Austrian heavy tanks attacking into incredibly weak British militia, who are desperately trying to hold this front because France has failed to do that. This is looking like it might actually be yet another cut-off if the Austrian heavies come here to assist. The German powers are doing their job, screening the Italian front. The Italian front is being pushed by even more of these Austrian heavy tanks. This network that they have going, where Bulgaria builds the tanks and then sends them to Austria to actually use, seems to be working pretty nicely. And I do wonder if they're using the Austrian license to make them. Unfortunately, that's one of the things I can't check. I really want to. Because that makes sense. If Austria is selling their license and Austria can get really, really good heavy tanks, then the bonuses that are built into the tank company would then be built by Bulgaria, who has the chromium to actually build the heavy tanks. Because that's the advantage Bulgaria has, is they have oodles of chromium. 600 extracted. And they're using 255 of that and exporting the rest of it to Austria, who is also building heavy tanks. And there it is. Empire of Japan has declared war on German East Asia. That means that the CoPro is now at war with the Reichspact. But I'm not convinced that they have the troops to do this. Yeah, they're going to take some stuff in the Far East. How is that going to affect Germany? It would affect Germany because it could potentially take away their rubber supplies. But apparently Japan forgot to tell China, because there are no Chinese troops down here guarding the borders. They also apparently forgot to tell Siam, because there are no Siamese troops protecting the border. Oh, what? Okay. We do have German Southeast Asia fighting against the Japanese down here. Now, is this a GEA that has gone German force? They have. So these units are going to be very strong. There's not going to be a huge number of them, but they are going to be incredibly strong. And they're going to be able to resist, especially on the defense, any attacks made by the Siamese down here. Because these units, like, you don't want to be in front of them when they attack you. But the problem is going to be their manpower. They might well run out. So we have GEA attacking into India. GEA, I don't think has a navy. They have a navy, just not a very big one, so the Japanese death stack might be able to do some work. Though, of course, that is going to cost the Japanese death stack a lot of fuel. And I don't necessarily think that Japan has that fuel spare. Particularly because Japan is also the air controller. And that's
hey, Mordred.
Hello.
China DC'd. This doesn't pause the game because he's not a major, so CoPro used their timeouts. They have 2 minutes.
Okay. No problem. So CoPro is using one of their timeouts to take a 2-minute break. So I am also going to take a 2-minute break at this point. So if you need to take a break, I'd recommend you do so now. I am going to run an advert while I'm not here because I might as well. So 2 minutes everyone, and we shall resume at that time. You think that Russia is going to get pushed? I mean, I think that they've given Ukraine so much time that yes, that might well happen. It's going to be interesting to see what the Entente does now. Do they go after the Reichspact in Africa to try and assist Third International? Do they crawl inside the skins of the Third International and try and take as much of that territory before the Reichspact can? Or do they go after the co-prosperity sphere and try and steal some of the Asian territories for victory points? I don't know that they feel like they can go after the Asian territories because I don't think they have the navy, or they probably don't have the confidence of navy to go up against Japan. I don't think they have the naval to do anything except go after Spain, possibly Italy. I don't think that they would think that they can reach the Union of Britain, especially because they don't own Iceland. And I suspect that the Reichspact is now close enough to Paris where they can just take that territory. I mean, the Reichspact will take that territory before the Entente even gets there. Now, one thing which I would like to see is exactly the array of troops down here. Although pushing across Turkey this way is difficult. It's just like going across the Afghan mountains. That's not a battle I would like for anyone. Fighting through Ukraine is easier. There's better supply, there's better routes. You do have this giant river here, which if Ukraine manages to fortify, they'll be fine. They may also try and push against Sweden into Finland, but again, Finland's not pleasant territory, especially for tanks. Like this much forest, it has to be infantry. And Sweden is not guarding that. Sweden is instead guarding a line over here. Okay, interesting. And it's in fact not even Sweden, it's Austria. Because of course it is. So it looks like Russia can make a push taking out Finland. And it doesn't look like Sweden's going to try to hold that. Meanwhile, we have got heavy tanks attacking into Ukraine. This is going to be the important area. So Kharkov is being hit by the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are actually giving up that border straight away. They are backing off to this front. And they're going to try and protect the river. I don't know if that's necessarily a good move. I quite like the idea of them delaying the Russians in getting to that river. Or maybe setting aside an army. Oh, you're not even using a field marshal. It's your biggest army. Please. Assign a field marshal. Please. You obviously know how, because you've got this guy. Anyway, what I was saying was, assign one of these 24 stacks, so you at least have some units entrenched here in case you have to fall back to it. And then just try and hold against the Russians up here. I think this is a mistake. Meanwhile, we have the Austrians and the Germans attacking into France. We've got the offensives along the Maginot. We do have the French tanks starting to have an impact. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian airdrop has now been defeated. The Belgian front is pretty much static at the moment. Shanghai has just fallen, unsurprisingly. I don't think they can really hold that. And then they have attacks going across the Alps as well via Italy. Meanwhile, the German airdrop is continuing to be a bit of a problem. But I think the real issue is the fact that the Reichspact armies are now on the gates of Rome, which is pretty much taking Italy out of this war. And in fact, it might even capitulate them, because I don't think, yeah, they haven't caught the south. Because two Sicilies are in the Reichspact, so they never actually capitulated. There goes the legation cities, who were on, I guess, the Reichspact side? Yes. And then we have the attacks against GEA. But right now, GEA is actually invading Siam. Somebody didn't tell them that they weren't supposed to be attacking stuff. And GEA is also fighting against Interlindia, though nowhere near as effectively. And in fact, they have no organization. Are they cut off? Oh no, they're regaining org. I don't know why they were without. But GEA's AI tends to be absolutely garbage. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're not as effective as they definitely should be. Meanwhile, in India, this would be a potential opportunity for India to try and push out, and the Entente, if they felt like actually doing something. But It looks like China has got this pretty well in hand, just dedicating hundreds of thousands of troops to defending this. We do see the Indians pushing back out from Bengal to try and take some of Burma back, because Siam is just not here. Siam is just missing. Oh, they're trying to push against GEA, probably to try and capitulate GEA before needing to deal with the Indians. And then we've got American forces fighting against the Russian forces in the Middle East. So if we take a look at the Canadians, we've got the French. Oh no, these are the Indians. I think under Expeditionary French, though. The French are microing them. Fighting against the Russians, who have all but abandoned that territory. These guys just need to be pushed and killed. That fight is as good as over. Sweden has to be a lower manpower. I mean, they've only been air controller up until this point. And while air power is fairly manpower intensive, they're even on total mobilization. No, they're fine. Total mob without women in the industry. Oh, I don't even know if that's an option in this. That might just be a vanilla thing. Anyway, Russia. Russia's attacks. This is what I am interested in. They've caught a couple of Ukrainian forces out of position. We have German heavy units around Ekaterinoroslav, defending Ekaterinoroslav, and Pavlograd, trying to defend possibly some of the industry. I don't know why Germany in particular is interested in these positions, and why the Ukraine has a 10 stack here. It looks like they're going to try and hold on to the Crimea. They have a lot of men guarding this. And I guess they mean to keep Sevastopol open so they can keep this supplied. Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised the Ukraine gave up against Russia so easily. I don't think they should have. I think Entente and CoPro made a deal. I don't think they necessarily made a deal. I think they just kind of mutually accepted that India is too hard to push, and that they would rather have troops positioned elsewhere. Okay, what the hell is up with America? What are you doing? Why are your units on 0 organization? Okay, they're force marching somewhere. Middle East. Because that's obviously the most important place to be fighting right now. Okay. Meanwhile, in Italy, we have the Austrian submarines fighting against the CNTFAI's surface fleet. It's relatively well screened. Better than some of the screens we've seen up to this point. Anyway, meanwhile, we have the Austrian heavy tanks attacking into Rome. No, attacking north of Rome. Probably to try and get a couple more territories, and particularly to not have to do the river crossing into Rome. Oh no, that is Rome. My bad. That is the Rome province. So yeah, the heavy tanks are attacking Rome. Huzzah! From multiple directions. We've got these guys attacking, we've got him attacking. This guy isn't. Probably just forgotten. And then, of course, the massed German heavy infantry. Also, we have got the Two Sicilies Navy has arrived. Properly screened, with a lot of capital ships, and they are obliterating the CNT's fleet right now. Go Two Sicilies. I knew they had it in them. I knew they did. So Two Sicilies is sinking a bunch of CNTFAI destroyers, which is destroying the screens right now, and very nearly sinking the CNTFAI's capital ship, flagship. They are catching more of them. It looks like that heavy cruiser is going to get sunk. That battleship is in very big danger. They have taken out... There it is. One heavy cruiser has been sunk. They could get another one. They may also get a battleship. There it is, one. Oh no, they've got another destroyer class. They have taken a fair amount of damage themselves. They don't have that many big guns themselves. They're also going to be relatively old, but that's another heavy cruiser sunk. They might get the battleship. They now have 100% screen, 80% screen. That was a great engagement for the Two Sicilies, coming in last second and just saving the day. Gotta love Two Sicilies. 15 destroyers, 2 heavy cruisers, no losses. Beautiful. When the AI manages navies better than the players. Meanwhile, France attacks Belgium. So what other conflicts do we have? We have the clearing up of these units. I don't know how these Italians are still in supply. Maybe they just have really good out of supply modifiers. They must do. Yeah, they must do. SRI just capitulated. SRI did just capitulate. So Italy's out. Two Sicilies are back again, baby. Oh yeah. MVP of the game, two Sicilies for sure. Then we've got attacks going on against Nice. The attacks around France have slowed for the moment. Although I am very, 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 very nervous about these two positions in particular. Being held by Union of Britain militia with that much strength. That's a problem. 25% fighting strength right now. That does not fill me with confidence. Meanwhile, down here we do have the Ukrainians counterattacking against the Russians. As Anthrath was saying, and Anthrath, by the way, was Russia last week. That's why I take what he says about Russia fairly heavily. Ukraine is counterattacking. Why did Ukraine withdraw? They had no reason to do this. Because now they're the ones having to cross the river to attack against the Russians. That was silly. They really should have just been fighting a holding battle. This I understand. The fact that Sweden thinks, okay, we don't have the forces to hold the entire borders of Finland. It's a mean, nasty area to fight. Sweden could probably fight a delaying action, but I think ultimately they made the right decision there because they probably would have suffered too many casualties. Ukraine, however, doesn't have that issue. They have a lot of manpower. They have a pretty strong industry. They are being supported by their allies. We do have some of the mean German units down here as well now. And yeah, it's Ukraine counterattacking. So all of this territory that they just gave up for free, they now have to fight across. Meanwhile, it looks like India is clearing up the Russian attack. So you were saying that Copro and Entente had a truce? They don't. They're fighting in the Middle East. It's just India. It's too hard to hit. We do see the dying moments probably of the German East Asia. They do have a bit of cutoff here, though actually they are still in supply. If this unit holds, they are still in supply. And they are also holding this absolutely beastly area here. Lots of forests. It's a very, very narrow front to be attacking across. Although, unfortunately, they do look to be losing the south. I'm kind of curious how many casualties they inflicted against Siam. German East Asia, 40,000. Okay, they probably could have done better. Meanwhile, they are being cleaned up in the Indies. Borneo is probably going to fall soon. So yeah, GEA, rip. But with one of the worst AIs in the game, I'm not altogether surprised. Meanwhile, this is a reverse situation, where the CNTF AI is holding on to Sicily, as opposed to the Entente holding on to Sicily for the two Sicilies, who are now without a Sicily. They are the no Sicilies, two Sicilies. And I'm going to take a look at Sweden, because I'd like to see what the air situation is for the Reichspact. So right now there are some enormous air battles going on over eastern Ukraine. We've got 6,300 fighters fighting against 6,654. It looks like the Swedes are having the upper hand, 35 to 50. So even though they are outnumbered slightly, they're killing 2 to 1. So these must be older planes. 50 to 60. Air efficiency 95 to 93, that's pretty close. 40 to 70. 50 to 80, 30 to 50. Yeah, so this is another air battle that the Reichspact seems to be winning. They have lost air control over northern France, which is not surprising, seeing as they're not actually contesting that. And France could be using this opportunity to counterattack and try and retake some of these territories. This is their opportunity to do so, because the Reichspact is distracted. But more and more ground is just being lost by the Third International at the moment. And with all of this having happened, how are the scores looking? Now that Rome has fallen, right now Third International is still winning. They have 17 points. No, they don't. Oh, that was prelim. That was a different game. I was going to say, that's definitely not the score. So Germany East Asia is just gone. Why can't I click on the final? Oh, I think Chrome's just being super slow. There we go. So Reichspact is currently on 6 points, Third International is on 4, the Entente on 2, and Copro on just 1. This is definitely, at this point, Reichspact's game to lose. If they can take Paris, I would say that their gains are pretty much solidified. So Paris is what they're fighting for now. USA, what are you doing? Fighting in the Middle East. And Hawaii. Okay, so they are bringing lots of heavy tank divisions into North Africa. And by lots, I mean 2. I guess the others are still en route. Yeah, they are. Oh, unescorted too, I'll bet. Yep, of course they are. Yep, sending heavy tanks completely unescorted across the Pacific, where you have lost a series of running battles against the Japanese. Thankfully for them, Japan hasn't done an amazing job of naval raiding, although they do have the Straits of Malacca and also Java Sea. And those American heavies are going to come through here. And at that point, Japan's going to start laughing maniacally, because that's just handing those heavy tanks to the Japanese. Meanwhile, the Russians are attacking into Sweden. Although Sweden does have their lines pretty well established, they've been building forts in a few places. So they've got some northern forts up here where they're... Oh no, they still have the river as well. I wonder if Sweden's trying to build more forts. Yeah, so Sweden's building forts right now. One of the problems with building forts this way is you'll go 4 forts, 4 forts, 4 forts, 4 forts, leaving these provinces completely unguarded. What you really want to do is build 1 in each, and then another 1 in each, and then another 1 in each, and then another 1 in each, or maximum 2 at a time. Don't do like 4, 4, 4, 4, because Russia is just going to have the opportunity to push through here while this is being fortified. Is there an end date, or what's the point system? So the end date is basically when the game finishes this evening. So midnight tonight, British summertime, game ends. And whoever is ahead in score at that point wins. We did start slightly late, so there was a question as to whether we would have that extra time added on. But I don't know if it will. Meanwhile, Ukraine is once again retreated behind the river in Kherson, despite the fact that they crossed the river and pushed the Russians out. And Russia's like, alright, we'll let you have that. Fine. Meanwhile, the Russian heavy tanks are hanging out over here, probably wondering where they can align or angle themselves. We do have Austrian heavies coming over to the Ukrainian front, having done their job most efficiently in Italy. And we now have a pretty hefty cutoff, actually. CNTFAI has caught a bunch of German regular infantry units, German support units, and we'll take a look at what those are in a minute, and then also the German Air Force, German Airborne. Entente just declared war on Mexico. So what were those? Anti-tank. I don't know why it doesn't update with the actual details. There we go. They have a piercing of 74, so not quite enough to pierce the heavy armor that France has. They're trying, but they're not enough. But they will at least have a hard attack, so they can do damage to the mechanized units. Meanwhile, France attacks Belgium. Breaking news, France attacks Belgium. Again. France is trying to attack into Suez, and they might actually manage to take that one province, though they are still very much surrounded. However, if they take this, they're just one spot away from the port here, and then at that point, this lot can run away. They would have to escape through the Red Sea, go all the way around Africa, where Germany is still catching their convoys, because somebody has not set that to do not venture here. Germany is catching Siamese, and Russians, and Japanese. Interesting. So all of the trade that's coming through here is being intercepted, and because of it, their chromium has been cut off. So Russia's not getting chromium. Japan probably isn't getting something like fuel. Aluminium.